Hello and welcome, I'm Ellie Richardson and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines of this hour. Russian officials have arrived in Geneva for talks with US and Ukrainian teams aimed at ending the years-long conflict in Ukraine. US President Donald Trump hopes Ukraine reaches a deal with Russia fast. US President Donald Trump said that he would be involved indirectly in high-stake talks between Iran and the US over Tehran's nuclear program in Geneva, adding he believed Tehran wanted to make a deal. Bangladesh's Prime Minister-to-be, Tariq Rahman, and lawmakers are sworn into Parliament, becoming the first elected representatives since a deadly 2024 uprising. President Donald Trump has said Cuba was a failed nation and called on Havana to make a deal. Washington is in talks with Cuba's highest people, just days after he threatened the island's struggling economy with what he described as a virtual oil blockade. New Mexico lawmakers passed legislation to launch what they said was the first full investigation into what happened at Zorro Ranch, where the late US sex offender Jeffrey Epstein is accused of trafficking and sexually assaulting girls and women. A bipartisan committee will seek testimony from survivors of alleged sexual abuse at the ranch, located about 30 miles south of Santa Fe. Heavy rains and strong winds have lashed New Zealand in recent days, killing one man, flooding large areas and cutting power links to tens of thousands across New Zealand's North Island. French President Emmanuel Macron begins a three-day visit to India on Tuesday, with talks focused on artificial intelligence cooperation and a potential multi-billion-dollar Dassault Rafale fighter jet deal. 3 people, including the suspect, were fatally shot during a Rhode Island youth hockey game. Pawtucket Police Chief Tina Goncalves told reporters that 3 other victims were hospitalized in critical condition. The shooter died from an apparent self-inflicted gun wound. And for your top story this hour, the foreign ministers of Saudi Arabia, Jordan, UAE, Qatar, Indonesia, Pakistan, Egypt and Turkey have strongly condemned Israel's decision to designate land in the occupied West Bank as state land and approve producers for settlement registrations. They called the move a grave escalation, aiming to intensify settlement activity and undermine Palestinian rights. The ministers reaffirmed that the step violates international law, including the 4th Geneva Convention and UN Security Council Resolution 2334. They stressed that the decision contradicts the International Court of Justice's advisory opinion and undermines the prospects of a two-state solution, calling for a decisive international action to halt these violations. Russia launched 29 missiles and 396 drones at Ukraine ahead of the US-mediated peace talks in Geneva, according to Kyiv. The 2-day talks, set to begin today afternoon, will likely focus on land disputes, with Russia demanding that Ukraine cede 20% of the Donetsk region, which Kyiv has rejected. The talks, now being held in Switzerland, follow 2 previous rounds in Abu Dhabi that saw little breakthrough. Meanwhile, Kremlin says 3-way talks on Ukraine in Geneva, and it will continue tomorrow. No information expected today. US President Donald Trump is pressing both sides to reach a deal, but the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has expressed concerns over the pressure to make concessions. We are now being joined by Georgi Toloroya, who's a professor at Russia Academy of Science. Thank you so much for joining us today on NewsX World. What does the scale of timing and the timing of Russia's attack 29 missiles and 396 drones on critical infrastructure indicates about Moscow's military strategy as diplomatic negotiations are underway in Geneva?
Well, I wouldn't say there's something dramatic. There's a normal war going on. 29 missiles is just peanuts. And Ukrainians also have launched about, I think, more than 150 drones over Russia this past night. So it's unfortunate, it's the war business as usual. And unless the negotiations are over, you shouldn't over-dramatize it. This is what Zelensky is doing. He's using his propaganda to try to present his opponents as doing something wrong in order to strengthen his position. That's a very cheap trick.
And how might such significant escalation in hostilities affect the credibility and future prospects of peace talks in Geneva, particularly given previous rounds mediated by international actors?
I don't agree with you qualifying this as an escalation. It's a normal war going on, and it will go on unless the peace is reached. And so don't try to say that there is some escalation on the Russian part. The same can be said about Ukrainian. They would have escalated if they had more firepower, but they are doing what they can with the resources they have. Russia is doing what it can with the resources it can, and will continue so unless the peace is reached.
And how should Ukraine balance immediate defense needs when with its long-term diplomatic goals?
Well, I don't really care about Ukraine. Ukraine could go to Geneva talks with serious intention to find peace, to find a solution that will suit everyone. If they haven't got this spirit, if they haven't got this will, then no solution can be found. And it wouldn't be surprising because Zelensky wants to continue the war, to keep on in his position, to keep his president's post, and to get more aid and more support from Western powers.
Thank you, Professor Georgi. Stay with us as we will be back with you shortly. Nikolai Patrushev, a close ally of Russian President Vladimir Putin, says that Russia could deploy its navy to prevent European powers from seizing its vessels and may retaliate against European shipping if Russian ships are seized. This comes as Western states have sought to cut off Russia from global trade and cripple its finances by imposing more than 30,000 sanctions over its war in Ukraine. They have also tried to block oil tankers suspected of involvement in Russian oil shipments. And in January, the United States seized a Russian-flagged oil tanker as part of its efforts to curb Venezuelan oil ports. We are now being joined by Professor Georgi again. Thank you for joining us back here on NewsX World. What are the geopolitical implications of Russia threatening to deploy its navy to stop European countries from seizing Russian-linked vessels?
Well, first of all, when you say sanctions, it's a tricky word. Sanctions means that only when a country or certain international act is punished for something, for doing something wrong, and that's what the UN does. Any country, individual country, declaring sanctions, this is not sanctions. That's the hostile act towards another country. This is not punishment because no one has the right to judge of the individual countries. Only UN has. So when you say that the US and European are pursuing their sanctions and Russians breaking it, it's just bilateral movement from both sides. Both sides take hostile acts against one another. But seizing a ship at high seas is an act of war. It's casus belli, classical casus belli. This is something that can be answered in full strength by full military force. And I think that Russia have promised strong rebuff, but it can include anything. It could include attacking the same vessels who attack Russian ships. It can include doing symmetrically attacking the Western cargo ships, and even, for example, planting mines on some sea routes which are used by Western powers. If one starts, and in this case, the West European countries held by US start a war, they get the war in exchange. That's how it goes.
And is the language of potential retaliation against European shipping a credible threat or strategic posturing by the Kremlin? And how should NATO respond to avoid escalation?
Well, stop this high seas piracy. It's a piracy. It's an act of war. This is the ship, which is a peaceful ship, and it's carrying not military but civilian targets in a simple act of trade. They say that this trade benefits Russia. Well, trade benefits countries. If Russia is denied trade, then other countries will also be denied the right to trade. The ships should be attacked and sunk.
And how might these tensions over seizing vessels shape future Western policy on sanctions, maritime security and diplomatic channels with Moscow?
I think this is it not only concerns Moscow. It's a very strategic, dangerous precedent. If a country's ships are seized because some country doesn't like this country trading and getting profit, then it can be repeated with any other country. Next day, when you have a conflict, when India has a conflict with Pakistan, for example, China could seize Indian ships saying, well, we want to deny you the right to trade because you attacked Pakistan, or something like that. This is a very dangerous situation, dangerous precedent. It should be immediately stopped before it gets too late.
Thank you, Professor Georgi, for joining us here on NewsX World. A series of attacks in northwest Pakistan have left at least 14 people dead, including 3 civilians and 11 security personnel. The incidents, which involved 2 bombings and a gunfight between attackers and police, took place in Khyber, Pakhtunkhwa, a province, resulting in at least 25 others being wounded. The attacks come amid rising insurgent activity in southern and northern provinces bordering Afghanistan. This follows a recent suicide bombing in Islamabad claimed by the Islamic State, which killed 31 people and wounded 169 others. We are now being joined by retired Major General Gigi Davidi, who is a war veteran and Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies, joining us from New Delhi. Thank you for joining us here today on NewsX World. Thank you. What does this latest militant attack in northwestern Pakistan signal about the evolving security situation in regions like Khyber?
Well, Ali, if you look at the larger picture, Pakistan has been witnessing a series of violent incidences, especially over the recent times. And there is a rationale and a reason for this. First and foremost, Pakistan is misgoverning, especially as the minority areas that include Khyber, Pakhtunkhwa, include Balochistan, and also the Pakistan occupied Kashmir. And these minorities have been victimized, they have been marginalized, and so therefore they have taken to arms to get the justice. Now these recent instances now in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa is primarily orchestrated by the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, because firstly Pakhtuns do not accept themselves as part of Pakistan. Secondly, there is a border of about 2,640 kilometers, and they have not accepted the Duran line. So therefore these instances are taking place off and on, and Pakistan alleges that the TTP, that is Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, is getting support across the Afghanistan border. Then also recently there have been very serious violent incidents in Balochistan. the Balochistan Liberation Army last month, they took a heavy toll of the security forces. So, and also, in Islamabad, there was an attack on the Shia mosque by the ISIS. And all this, what does it show? It shows, as I said initially, that Pakistan is misgoverning. These minorities have serious issues, they have serious grievances, which Pakistan has not been able to address. And another very important factor is Pakistan is a state which uses proxies, which uses terrorists as part of the national policy. And therefore, they have been breeding all type of groups. And today, these groups, many of them have turned against their masters, and you see very high rate of violence and such instances taking place. Ali.
And how are Pakistan's security forces adapting their counter-terrorism strategies in response to attacks that are increasingly affect both security personnel and civilians, including children?
Well, Ali, Pakistan government and especially its army is trying to solve or resolve the political problem through military means. And they have been using very heavy-handed approach and using, exorbitant force. In fact, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, they have known to use the F-16 fighters, aircrafts, and they are using very heavy weapons against these, either you call them insurgent or the freedom fighters. The point is, Pakistan army, their policy has been steamrolling policy, use extensive force against these groups, and that has not worked out, because the point is that these groups are very, they operate in small teams, they are very agile, and they employ guerrilla tactics, and where the army is using very conventional means. And I feel that until there is a political dialogue, there is a political means to resolve the issue, this military approach is not going to work. And that's exactly the situation on the ground, that since especially last couple of months, the Pakistan security forces have paid a heavy price, because they have been trying to target these groups, but they have not succeeded. Rather, they have suffered very heavy casualties in return. Ali.
And what are the humanitarian and social impacts in reoccurring militant attacks on local communities, particularly in terms of displacement, fear and long-term deployment?
Well, Ali, there have been serious human rights violations by the Pakistan army, and number of human rights organizations have pointed out these. Thousands of people have gone missing in Balochistan, and so also in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. The point is that there have been serious violations of human rights as far as the locals are concerned, and therefore that's why their representative groups like Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan or Balochistan Liberation Army has taken on upon themselves to protect their minority groups. But unfortunately, I feel that the human rights organization also have double standards, and they have not come very heavily on Pakistan. Rather, Pakistan was on the grey list of the FATF, but they managed to wriggle out by using the influence of China and even America. I think that Pakistan should be on the blacklist as far as because they are supporting these terrorist organizations. But the point is that human rights organizations have limitations, and the people continue to suffer. Unfortunately, they have not been given the right kind of hearing or the right kind of support. So therefore, there are blatant, human rights violations by the Pakistani security forces, and at the end of it is the civilians who end up paying a very heavy price. But that's the irony of this situation in Pakistan. Ali.
Thank you so much, Major General Gigi Davidi, for joining us here today on NewsX World. It was a pleasure speaking with you. President Donald Trump, Trump's new ambassador to South Africa, conservative media critic Brent Boswell, has arrived in Pretoria to take up his post. This comes as tensions between the two nations remain high following Trump's return to office in January 2025. Relations have been strained since Trump expelled South Africa's ambassador, accusing him of being critical of the US. Bozell, founder of the Media Research Center, is a staunch defender of Israel, and his appointment comes amid disagreements, including South Africa's genocide case against Israel. Although Bozell has arrived, he still needs to present his credentials to South African President Cyril Ramaphosa before assuming his official title. India's second largest software exporter, Infosys, has revealed that AI services accounted for 5.5% of its revenue in the December quarter, marking the first time the company has broken out its AI business. CEO Salil Parekh has said AI is growing rapidly and is well integrated with client services, including autonomous agents and embedded systems. According to reports, Infosys is working over 4,600 AI projects and has built more than 500 AI agents. This disclosure comes amid growing investors' concerns about AI's potential to dispute the traditional outsourcing model. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.